Good morning, happy Monday, or whatever day and time you're tuning into this on. I'm so excited you're here for this discussion on conscious versus subconscious, conscious versus subconscious. And this can be in your thoughts and also in your actions, because we know that your actions stem from your thoughts and your thoughts create your actions and vice versa. So without further ado, actually, no, I'll give you a little preview. In case you're new here, my name's Jess. I share mindset and goal setting content every single day. I started this about 3 weeks ago, and today actually marks 2 weeks officially on YouTube, which is so fun. And seeing the growth and the comments and how you are actually taking this information and absorbing it has made me so happy. And I think it was like 75 new subscribers on YouTube, which for me, 2 weeks in is like huge. And that shows the momentum, right? The 1% better every single day, which is the goal, because we know change doesn't happen overnight. It's not like one day you're here and the next day you're there. True, lasting, sustainable change is 1% better every day. And you are incrementally turning up the temperature, like that frog analogy from last Friday. You're incrementally turning up the temperature so you don't actually feel the incremental changes. That's how we truly create change in our lives. Now, talking about conscious and subconscious or unconscious. If you have never heard this concept before, just trust you're gonna get exactly what you need to get out of today. We have our conscious or our thinking mind, right? This is our rational mind. And then we have our subconscious. This is like, think of an iceberg. You know what, an iceberg, it's like 10% is above the surface of the water, and then it actually goes way down underneath, and that's like 90% of the mass of the ice. It's the same thing like your mind. Your conscious mind is the tip of the iceberg, and your subconscious, that is your emotional, your feeling mind, right? It's not necessarily rational or logical. That's your intuition, that's your gut feeling, that's your sense of knowing, that's your beliefs, that's your identity, that's your, truths about the world. That all happens subconsciously. That's under the surface of the water. We can't see it, but we know it's there. And according to neuroscience, 90% of your actually thinking and action stems from the subconscious mind. Now, a great analogy to think about this of what is driving your actions and behavior, and it's not a bad thing to do things subconsciously, it's actually just a survival mechanism. Like, it's how we operate. A really great analogy is like driving a car. And if you have never learned to drive a car, then think in terms of, I don't know, maybe a bike or When you're first learning to drive, imagine the first time you got into that car. Maybe you did like the driver's ed, and you were told this is where the key, this is where the start button is, this is how to put the key in, this is the gear shift. You have to, shift into drive. You have to adjust your mirror, all those steps. So you sit in the classroom and you learn about those steps, and you're thinking, and you're trying to almost like memorize what are those steps, like where are those buttons, etc. Then you get in the car and think of the first time you actually, like, literally imagine the first time you were in that car trying to drive it. So you have to think really hard. Okay, I have to turn the ignition on. And then I have to, shift the gears from park to drive. And then I have to check my mirrors. Okay. Then I have to, get out of the parking spot. And then I have to put my foot on the gas. And then when I'm going to turn the corner, I have to put my turn signal on. I have to turn the wheel, hands on 2 and 10, right? It is, when you're learning to drive a car, it's a lot of conscious thought. You have to be thinking, like, what are the steps? What are the actions? And eventually, right? And, for most of you listening to this, I know I can see it on statistics that most of you are adults. So there's not a lot of like teenagers listening. So this is probably a long time ago that you first learned to drive a car. Now, when you get in your car, how hard do you have to think about turning the ignition on, shifting into gear, and driving? You don't actually have to think about it, right? You're on autopilot. It has become so ingrained in your memory, in your subconscious mind, you don't have to consciously think about how to drive, right? You with me? Like, do you agree? Visualize it. Think about the last time you got in your car to drive. You didn't actually have to think about how to turn the car on and how to, navigate out of your parking spot and get onto the road, or how to complete a turn, where your hands are on the wheel. You're not consciously thinking of it, right? Yes? Okay, stay with me, because we're almost halfway through with 10 minutes a day. We learn through repetition. So the first time you're hearing this, there's a lot of conscious thought happening as you're picturing these things. The more of these trainings you do, the more days you show up, the more you'll be able to just intuitively like listen and know and understand where where we're going with this, okay? Coffee break. By the way, how cute's my mug? I post a coffee pour on my Instagram story every day. I didn't post it today because I deleted my apps over the weekend. I did a digital detox. I was actually thinking about making today's mindset training about digital detox, but maybe I'll do it another day this week. This one's from my fitness studio. It's called Shine Fit. And it says rise and shine. So I think it's really cute. One of my faves. Total distraction there. Total train of thought. Okay. Train of thought, lost train of thought. So we're in autopilot. Same thing as when you are driving somewhere you go every single day. Say you're driving to your work or your kid's school, somewhere you drive often. You can pretty much do it on autopilot. You're not like, okay, what is the next turn I have to make? You just know because you have it memorized and it's so deeply ingrained. You're fine. Like you're driving home from work and you're like, wait, how did I get home? Actually, I kind of don't even remember doing it, right? It's so on autopilot. This is how our subconscious operates, that is your autopilot. And so this theory can be applied to any thoughts or actions in your life. So autopilot thoughts, what does that mean? If you are in the habit of self-deprecating, if you're in the habit of picking your body apart, like for example, if you constantly are thinking, I need to change my body. This is where I started learning all this material was for my fitness clients, for my fitness company, okay? Because I struggled with body image for a long time. And it was a autopilot. It started as conscious of picking myself apart. And then it became, I repeated it so many times. And we're gonna talk about the steps to go from conscious to unconscious. It became so ingrained that I was doing it subconsciously. Every time I would look in the mirror, I would just automatically look at all the ways in which my body was not good enough. The same thing can happen with actions, right? When you're building a new habit, let's flip it in a positive way, because that's a very negative thing to be constantly picking your body apart. You're building a new habit, it is very conscious, right? It requires, and some people say it requires like discipline. And so that initial stage when you're building the habit, when you're building the habit of doing your mindset work every day, there's probably a dialogue in your head like, no, we promised ourselves we would do this. You have to convince yourself to show up. And eventually it becomes so natural and so ingrained and so habitual that there's no conscious thought or convincing required. It's just a day-to-day action. Same thing as like brushing your teeth or washing your face. When you were a teenager, you had to actually think consciously every day, okay, I'm going to start washing my face or I'm going to start putting deodorant on. Like those are things you have to do as a teen, right? Or a preteen or whatever. Now, those things are so, you do it without even thinking. You're just, in the bathroom, it's your routine. This concept we can apply, to help change what are our default patterns. So I wanted to share what inspired this. Is actually I finished a book this morning called, got my materials here, Unconscious Branding. This is a marketing book, but it's called How Neuroscience Can Empower and Inspire Marketing. And it's talking all about applying conscious versus unconscious in a marketing or branding setting. So how do we create like those default feelings and emotions and associations with someone's brand? But I want to take some of these steps because it's valuable for us. I wrote out the part that I wanted to focus on, so I'm not flipping. 7 steps of unconscious branding. So we want to interrupt the pattern, create comfort, lead the imagination, shift the feeling, satisfy the critical mind, change the associations, and take action. So with our brief minute and a half left here, this is what we're going to go through, these 7 steps. This is how to take something from the conscious to the unconscious. And I just love the way it was broken down here. So interrupt the pattern. Let's run with this fitness example. You want to exercise consistently and you're in the pattern of not, right? We have to find a way to interrupt that. So signing up for a challenge, for a trial, signing up for something, right? That's interrupting your default pattern. And that's why there's so much excitement around that new thing. Now we want to create comfort. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about making these mindset trainings our default setting. So we're interrupting the pattern. So you've listened to one. Create comfort. This is what I'm doing and how I lead these. It should feel actually quite comfortable. It shouldn't feel forced like you're in school or you have to take notes or it's comfortable. Like we're just hanging out in my apartment. Then we want to lead the imagination. This is when we're picturing what would our life look like if we did this every single day? What if? And so those exercises like discovering your dreams or what if, marinating in the possibility, those videos are imagining like what if I changed my mindset and what if changing my mindset could change my life? Now shift the feeling. We want to feel And as we're imagining, we want to get emotionally involved in that. We're going to go a little over time, but this is so good. We want to stay in that feeling of, wow, it feels expansive. It feels light. Like, what if I didn't have to, hustle? What if I didn't have to be exhausted all the time? What if I didn't have to sacrifice? That feels good. So now we have these positive feelings associated with this work that we're doing. Now we satisfy the critical mind. This is where the hustle culture that comes, but how are you going to, achieve? How are you going to do this if you're not working hard? Those are the default things. Those are the limits coming up, the doubts coming up. And how do we satisfy that critical or that rational mind? For example, 90% of action and thought comes from the subconscious. See how I use that statistic? That actually satisfies your critical mind of like, oh, maybe there is something here worth giving this a try, because I've only tried with my logical mind before and that led me to hustling. So let's try something different. Change the associations and take action. So changing the associations of, working on myself or listening to mindset trainings is woo, or this is like dumb, it's a waste of time, to how can we associate this with growth? How can we associate this with something positive? How can we associate this with, the more I learn, the more I grow, or this knowledge is power, or, it's never a waste of time to work on yourself. So we're changing those associations with this new action. Same thing with fitness. Like, we're changing the association of fitness being about losing weight to changing the association to about feeling really good. And the last one is taking action. So this is where we're going to stop today. This is honestly like, I bit off a lot more than this. Is not a 10-minute discussion, but I wanted to just get as much as I could in here. And whatever questions you have, you can leave them in the comments. So that is going to be your action step. I want to see goals and gratitudes. So writing out 3 gratitudes for the day and 3 main goals that you're going to work on. And the other action step you're going to take is whatever questions you have about this training, whatever analogies were helpful, whatever you learned, you're going to put them in the comments so I can go in real time, see what is helping and where there are gaps, and then I can fill in for that in tomorrow's. And make sure you're subscribed so you can hang out with me again tomorrow. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow.